So I, like many of you, have been following along with this Riley Strain missing person case that started in Lower Broadway and stretched to the Cumberland River, and we've gotten some additional details from over the weekend. And really, I wanted to back up and try to figure out exactly what the police do and how they do it in the first 24 hours after they get a report of a missing person. And the one person that I thought that might be able to lend us a little bit of his expertise was Brink Fidler. Brink, of course, is the owner of Defend Systems. He's owned that company for a number of years. You hear me talking about Defend Systems all the time, and I appreciate what they do now to protect your place of business, your school, your church, any place people gather. But Brink also had 18 years of experience in the Metro Nashville Police Department. Now, I'm not suggesting he has direct experience with this type of investigation, but I think he could broadly help us understand exactly how police react to this sort of thing and what might be taking so long in discovering what exactly happened to Riley Strain. Joining us on the program today is Brink Fidler. Hey, Brink. How are you, man?
Good, man. How are you?
I'm doing well. I just appreciate the opportunity to get to speak with you. You're blowing and going, man. I'm glad of that. I'm glad we're keeping you busy. How have things been going with Defend?
Very busy, but good. Growth is good, but growing pains are also real. So, good problem to have, though. It could be, like 4 years ago, we were all sitting around looking at each other, wondering what's next. So,
well,
I'll take it as a blessing.
Have you? By the way, while I'm thinking about it, I need to ask this question. I should know this as a central spokesperson for Defend Systems here on Super Talk. Have you found yourself I know you were looking for someone in public relations. Have you found that right person yet? Or are you still looking?
We've got it narrowed down to a very, very short list.
Okay.
So I think we'll hopefully have a decision made here in the next week or two at the most.
Well, I told you one of the first times we met and talked business, I said, it's my job to make you hire people. So if you're hiring people, that means I'm doing my job and you're doing your great job. I kid because it's primarily the work that you do to try to help people be safety conscious and safety aware around the state of Tennessee and beyond. Here's my reason for calling and talking. I mean, I'm just curious your reaction to this case and how in your experience, the police respond to this. I mean, I would think that you cast a nets, and if you don't catch anything, you continuously then start casting wider nets while looking for evidence and information. Just walk me through how something like this might be handled by a police department the size of Metro Nashville.
Well, first thing I'll say is a lot of people have a misconception, if you will, about adult missing persons cases. If there's no signs of the person being in excessive danger, i.e. they're on life-sustaining medications, threats, violence, anything like that, then the police have to balance it with that adult's right to privacy as well, right? Like if you decided right now, if Matt Murphy decided he wanted to just disappear and unplug, you have the right to do that. I mean, there's nothing that says you can't, because, we have freedom in this country, right? And so it's always a balance there with how many resources are they going to dump at something if there's no major sense of urgency. Now, obviously, one could argue in this case, I mean, the guy was obviously extremely inebriated, and then didn't show up at the hotel, so there would be some sense of urgency there. But I just wanted to start there and just kind of say, there is a balance there, that they're not going to stop everything they're doing just to look for an adult who's gone missing unless that adult has some sort of extenuating circumstances.
Right. But at some point in this situation, they recognize that he was supposed to be at a particular place. He's out of town. He's come in for a weekend or whatever it is with his frat brothers. He cannot be found. And do you begin at that point trying to piece together what happened to him after he left the bar on Lower Broadway? And I guess that's when you start dealing with surveillance video and trying to figure out which direction he went. Yeah?
That's right. Yeah, because otherwise, I mean, how are you going to canvass and start looking for witnesses if you literally don't even have a direction of travel, right? So that's going to be step one. Also getting toll analysis and tower analysis on his cell phone. That's going to be another. And, of course, how accurate that is depends on a lot of factors. But then also you're going to check his credit card and debit card activity, right? Did he go somewhere else? Did he check into a different hotel? All those things are pretty standard and are done pretty quickly. So if they don't get anything there, they're going to start combing through footage and try to figure out his direction of travel. You know, I hope and pray for a miracle for his family, but as soon as I heard the area that he was headed towards, my immediate thought was he ended up in the river, just because I've seen that happen before. And there's in that area where he was kind of last seen headed and his cell phone last pinged, there's a huge drop off over a rock wall that if you don't know it's there, if you just jump over this rock wall, you're going down about 30 feet to the bank and potentially into the river, because I've seen a suspect jump over that wall unknowingly. There's also a railroad bridge that goes over the river. So, you know, there's just a lot of things there that led me to believe that's probably what happened.
Mm-hmm.
And then we hear over the weekend that some girls found a debit card on the bank.
So at any point, if you get a basic look, and I'm not asking you to throw Metro Nashville Police under the bus here. That's not the nature of my question, although maybe they did the right things, maybe they did the wrong things. I don't know. But at some point, if you recognize that he was near this homeless encampment, if you've got video of him near the homeless encampment, do you not have to shut that down and scour that area?
Yeah, I think, you know, I don't know about shut it down, but you would certainly go conduct some witness interviews and things like that. And from a searching standpoint, what they probably did, if I had to guess, aviation was, I'm sure, involved. That's a much faster and more effective way to search an area like that, especially this time of year when all the vegetation's not back yet. You know, using the thermal and the FLIR system to identify the location of, obviously, it would be people that are alive, but also because we've seen so many cases of people ended up in the river and drowning, the most effective way to canvass that is from the air, potentially the water. But you can imagine being in a boat trying to canvass it versus being, 600 feet in a helicopter. It's a lot more efficient. And I imagine that's what they probably did to canvass the area. I don't know that for a fact, but I don't think that much has changed as far as protocol goes.
So if I think many of us worked based on, our interest in this case. A young man comes into town, wants to party with his buddies. He gets really either inebriated or drugged up on something or another. I know the bar says they only served him one drink and then they asked him to leave. But we've seen on the video surveillance that he was obviously impaired, right? Our initial gut, I mean, that's kind of where my gut went. If he's near the river, is it possible that he accidentally fell in and then sadly drowned? Once again, we all pray that a miracle happens and he turns up, in back of a tomato truck somewhere in Texas. I don't know, but you know what I mean. So does the information that came out over the weekend for you, Brink, as someone who's been involved in police investigations for the number of years that you have, it struck me as odd that they would find just his debit card and nothing else. Did that seem odd to you all?
Well, again, in some ways, yes, but we also have to majorly factor in the fact that he was inebriated, right? And so when I heard that, my thought was, okay, did he realize, okay, I'm somewhere I'm not supposed to be? I don't even remember what hotel I'm staying at, and started pulling the, stuff out of his pockets to look for his hotel room key card, to maybe help him. That's kind of where my brain went, just from dealing with inebriated people a lot in a past life. So, again, I think the location of it doesn't alarm me, because the location where it was found is close to where his phone last pinged, right? And the only way to explain, how do you explain that? Unless your battery completely died all of a sudden, just miraculously, right when you're within a block of the river, which, I just find that hard to believe. All the things to me pointed to what you and I both hope is wrong, but what I believe happened.
If you had to lean toward accident or something intentional, which way would you lean? And I know we're in the arena of speculation, but this is just kind of me and you talking. Would you lean more toward accidental just based on his condition? Or is it possible that he got into or is it impossible to say? I'll give you a third option because I don't want to pin you down on this. But, I mean, the options start narrowing down to accidental drowning or accidental death versus something happening where he interacted with someone in that area versus, the remote possibility that he's still alive.
Yeah, no, I lean towards accidental drowning just because I've seen it. It's happened multiple times downtown, and just similar situations, not necessarily a college kid from out of town with his buddies, but inebriated people ending up in the river, suicidal people ending up in the river. But I've seen there's been a lot of accidental drownings downtown, especially this time of year. You got to figure out how cold that water is, and people don't understand how swift the water is too in the Cumberland. Like it's very swift water. So you get in that, you're in trouble in a hurry. Obviously, something more nefarious could have happened. I mean, that's always a possibility. But usually with that, you're going to have some witnesses, right? If there's any kind of violent commotion or fight or anything like that, there's people everywhere on Broadway, as you know, even at that time of morning, and in the downtown area. So I think we would have had probably some more information along those lines as far as witnesses go.
Well,
but, again,
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but toward what you're saying though, Brink, we had what many thought was going to be a break in the case, maybe a sad one, a tragic one, but a break in the case when it was announced that there was a body discovered in the river, and then it was announced that was not related to Riley Strain's disappearance. And a lot of people at that time, and I'll include myself, I said, whoa, how many bodies are they finding in the river? But toward what you're saying, sadly, that a large body of water like that with a well-populated area, particularly a populated area where, there's a lot of homeless encampments, there's a lot of people, imbibing and maybe not fully, functional with all of their faculties intact. Apparently this happens more often than we're aware of.
It absolutely does. Yeah. I was not surprised at all when they found the body and it was not that of this particular student, just because it's I don't want to say it's frequent, but it's fairly regular enough of an occurrence that it didn't surprise me at all.
Do you believe that I want to frame this correctly, because once again I don't want to put you in a position of speculating against your fellow officers or former fellow officers, but I mean, as you've watched this, does this seem pretty textbook how they would deal with the case? Anything that you can point to say that seemed a little odd, or maybe we might have gone a different direction if I were involved?
No, I mean, nothing jumps out at me. Again, just because missing person cases are relatively frequent, especially without some extenuating circumstances. And then also, just all the things that I've already mentioned that played into my mind. Tracy and I talked about it, and she said the same thing. She's like, my first thought was he ended up in the river. And she was in Metro for 10 years. It's that common.
Mm-hmm.
That stuff like that happens down there. So I think, they probably did their due diligence in that, trying to either locate him or unfortunately recover his body, because they didn't really have much else to go on, right? Except you go where the evidence leads you, right? And the evidence led them to that area and towards the river, and I'm sure they canvassed it. They probably just didn't do it on foot like you're talking about, where they would have found that debit card. But I think they probably did it in the most efficient manner possible. Plus, you got to keep in mind, and I think you teased this earlier, how short they are, right? I mean, not that this case is not important, but they just don't have the manpower to dedicate to go do a foot canvass of an entire riverbank when there's calls for service that are holding for literally 24 hours.
Right.
So they just got to balance it with all that. They're in a tough spot. It's a tough time to being law enforcement.
Well, it is. I mean, they are shorthanded, and obviously, most of these missing persons reports turn out positively, meaning the person turns up 48 hours later, or the person is fine. They just decided, like you mentioned at the beginning of the conversation, just to check out. Sometimes, sadly, they turn out tragically. Brink, I thought of you when I thought of expertise within the department and someone that would be knowledgeable about how the investigation would go, and I appreciate you spending some time with us on the road. Come in and see us sometime, okay?
Yeah, I'll do it. Thanks, Matt.
All right, thank you. There's Brink Fidler.